Pop punk has been around since the 1970s with bands like Descendants and the Dead Kennedys. From there, it reached the height of its popularity in the 90s and early 2000s with bands like Blink-182, The Offspring, Good Charlotte, and All Time Low. Now from there, the pop punk scene hasn't been as strong. Sure, Blink and All Time Low are still around, but they're the only ones around, right? Well, no. As much as there are classic pop punk bands still around and rising to popularity like Make Out, The Suicide Machines, and Neck Deep, I believe that pop punk is finally making a true resurgence, and this time in a different form. Although it's not the form that you think. In the past few years, people have been saying that pop punk has been making its return in the form of emo rap through artists like Lil Peep, Juice WRLD, and Lil Aaron. Although I beg to differ. I think that pop punk is actually coming back the same way it always has, but with a few more new elements thrown in there, to where the entire genre is not getting an overhaul, but a little touch-up. And that music sounds like this.
I've been losing my mind, trying to figure it out, but I'm stuck in a drought, I guess I'll start again.
I've been losing my mind, trying to figure it out, but I'm stuck in this house, I am my only friend.
Now, why is this the new pop punk of today, and why is something like Lil Peep not so much? Well, that really goes into the question of what is pop punk. To me, pop punk has always been just that, a mixture of pop and punk. To me, pop is catchy music you frequently hear on the radio and is about heavy topics yet barely scratches the surface of them. Such things like love, substance abuse, parental issues, and sometimes even current world events. As well, pop music now uses a lot of trap beats mixed with guitars and bass, although is mainly about and or focused around the pop stars themselves. Examples of pop stars are Camila Cabello, Shawn Mendes, Taylor Swift, and Bruno Mars. Punk, on the other hand, speaks about the same topics, but they tend to go deeper than the average radio listener would like to hear. As well, they don't use the normal A-B structure that most pop stars use. Punk songwriters usually go A, chorus, B, chorus, C, chorus, and D. On top of that, punk also has a heavier reliance on instruments, giving strong basses, memorable guitar moments, and badass drums. Examples of punk bands would be My Chemical Romance, Black Flag, Misfits, and Ramones. Almost messed it up, but I didn't. Let's go! So now for the magnum opus. What is pop punk? Well, in my eyes, pop punk seems to be a heavy combination of the two genres, and it's much more balanced out than people think. Pop punk takes the catchy lyricism and A-beat chorus structure of pop music, then throws in strong instrumentals that people remember forever from punk music. Now in the 70s, when this all first started, this wasn't the case. Pop punk usually leaned towards the punk part of it all, but the pop slowly started to come in and mostly take over in the 90s and 2000s. Back then, everything at the top of the charts was pop punk bands like Panic at the Disco, Fall Out Boy, All Time Low, Blink-182, and All American Rejects. Although as this became more and more popular, the popular half of pop punk began to take over. At the end of the early 2000s, this pop punk was everywhere, and everyone was kind of sick of it. Even to a point where people kind of looked down on it and slowly turned back to the hip-hop, rap, and pop scene. It was just too repetitive for everyone because after its conception, there wasn't much to go with. The thing that everyone loves about pop stars are the stars themselves, and in a genre that is band-centric, people don't really feel the same connection unless they're die-hard fans. Because of that, people realized that this whole sad pop thing with guitars just didn't really work, so people moved on, and it was not helped by the bands themselves. By then, Blink-182 was falling apart, Green Day were still being called sellouts, Fall Out Boy fell apart, All Time Low refused to change, and nothing was going right for any of the pop-punk powerhouses. So by the time we reached the 2010s, we had moved on without pop-punk. That then led into the rise of emo music. In 2010, My Chemical Romance made Danger Days, the closest thing we had to pop-punk music in a long time. 4 years prior, they made the biggest emo album, probably ever. You wanna know why? Because they invented emo. Emo was everywhere. Emo is what the weird kids got called in high school. And the closest thing that they could get to emo music from the past was the pop-punk albums their older brothers and sisters owned. Included in these albums were Panic at the Disco, Fall Out Boy, All Time Low, and Blink-182. So when MCR broke up, the hole that they filled had something to fall back on, and that was pop-punk music, as well as the new ability to stream music on their iPhones and iPods. So around the same time, who came back? Fall Out Boy, Panic at the Disco, Paramore, Green Day, and later Blink-182. They had returned with everything that everyone wanted because the kids of today loved the music they already had, and the parents/adults missed the music they used to listen to. From there, everything went pretty good for about 3 years. Green Day released Revolution Radio in 2016, Fall Out Boy released American Beauty, American Psycho, Panic at the Disco had Death of a Bachelor, and Blink came around with California. Although most of history does repeat itself, and by 2018, Panic went pop, so did Fall Out Boy. Paramore wasn't pop, but was completely different. No one had heard from Green Day, and pop punk was officially dead again. Why? Because no one knew how to change without becoming another genre. Although this time around, the hiatus wasn't as long. In 2018 and 2019, the rise of SoundCloud rappers kind of came out of nowhere. These SoundCloud rappers, though, weren't rappers in the typical Tupac, Beastie Boys, Eminem, and Kanye type of way. These rappers talked about heavy topics like how depressed they were, a breakup that they had gone through, and drugs. A lot of drugs. All of them. All of them talk about drugs, depression, and the many other messed up things that grown-ish people went through. Although the subject matter isn't the only thing that lines up with both pop punk, emo, and rap music. A lot of this music included an AV chord structure, something that pop punk and rap music have. Although that's where the similarities end, much of the actual music was not actual instruments and rarely consisted of actual music. Sometimes there would be guitar thrown in, but usually that would actually be downloaded from websites then added in the mixing. Many of the components were actually downloaded and then edited in afterwards, like the trap beats that everyone knows. In that, actually, this type of music is closer to rap music than it is pop punk music. So now that I've broken down what this music is, let's talk about what people are actually saying about this type of music. This music has a really weird place in the world, and in my opinion, all of these artists keep freaking dying, had a really weird place in the world. To me, this genre of music is over, and to me, that is really why this isn't the new pop punk. Yes, people were saying that this is the new pop punk, but as you see based on the past evidence, it's not at all that mix of pop and punk. The best thing to call it would be rap punk or emo with 808s or trap rock. As well, pop punk listeners don't like this kind of music, and diehard rap listeners only like a small portion of this music. Therefore, there was no place in the music world for this type of music, and the only people that really liked it were the actual new followers of this music. So yeah, phonetically, it's not pop punk. To pop punk people, it's not pop punk, and it's not even around anymore to be pop punk. So what is the new pop punk? Well, just a moment ago, I mentioned an artist named Ian Dior, and Ian Dior has just kicked in the doors for what the new pop punk is. Ian Dior released a song called Sick and Tired. The song featured Machine Gun Kelly and Travis Barker, drummer of Blink-182. Now, MGK, Machine Gun Kelly, has released music like this before, but to me, those two songs never impacted or hit as hard as Sick and Tired. The two songs like this that he released was I Think I'm Okay, featuring Youngblood and Travis Barker, and then he released Why Are You Here, a song that he had made all by himself. Those two songs were obviously inspired by pop punk, but each leaned more towards the punk part of pop punk, and was missing the key component that would catapult it into creating a new era of pop punk. The more you listen to it, the more and more you realize what genre this is in, and at first, you wouldn't categorize it as pop punk. The song itself has the layout of a pop punk song, more so than many pop punk songs in the past. The song starts with a bridge version of the chorus, then goes into a verse, hits the chorus again, goes into another verse, and then ends on a chorus. The weird/different thing about this is that the song feels as if there could be another verse to end on, but that would be something a rapper or a pure punk singer would do. That obviously brings it close to the pop genre, but this is not a pop song. The instruments of this music include a distorted version of Travis's drums and MGK's guitar. Throughout the whole song, there is a guitar riff that is very simplistic. It's the same with the drums. It's there throughout the entire song, but there's one thing different about these instruments. The guitar sounds distorted, almost as if it's a series of beat boops instead of actual guitar chords. At the same time, the drums go from an actual trap beat in the verses to full-on drums in the chorus that incorporates that trap rock version of music and classic pop punk music. So the phonetics of the song is a mixture of the current era of punk with the trap rock type music and classic pop punk. Therefore, it's different enough to be pop punk and create this new form of pop punk music. The pop punk is also still fully there in the lyrics of the song and the way it's put together. Okay. Therefore, this is the new version of pop punk. It has deep lyrics that pop punk has always had, the rhyme scheme that pop punk has always had, the instruments that pop punk has always had, but has enough differences to be an almost completely different type of music. It's something that pop punk has never had: new blood, young blood. No, not that young blood, but like actual fresh stuff. This is what pop punk needs, and this is the stuff that's going to bring it back and have it going again for years and years. It's fresh, it's old, it's what we need, and it's what we wanted. Pop punk is better today because it has a fresh scent. It's clean now. It's finally been in the wash. It has something new or different to say, unlike pop punk in the past.